time I make a Yu-Gi-Oh video on Takahashi's narrative and the substance of the topic, I always want to explore the idea and evolution of Duel Monster's writing and status quo the author set up. During the beginning of Season 0 and the original Duel Monster series, Kazuki Takahashi always focused the shift and dynamic on Yami Bakura and Atem's small-scale rivalry. Personal scale rivalry of these two morally ambiguous characters explore the narrative idea of evil. To put it in simple terms, Bakura and Atem actions being a bit selfish at times. The duality and relationship between both of these twisted human psychopaths are their notions of justice itself and how their actions affect others. When it comes to the focus and the idea of evil in the Yu-Gi-Oh series, it gets brought up with other characters having inhuman and ethical desires, having a form of resolutions, our sense of justice, and focus on the idea of man itself. Idea of evil somewhat questioned in the early arcs from the beginning and end of the Battle City finals. During both Bakura and Atem introduction into the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, mirrors of their motivation and drive to win are extremely open. Atem, who was a dangerous psychopath, wanted to fulfill the wishes of Yukimoto and will try to do and act a shadow game to punish the people who threatened the vessel, aka Yugi. Atem would allow the human characters to battle him in his games and challenge the selfish desires and beliefs. Atem, scared and threatened Tetsuo, who bullied Yugi and Jonochi, was able to defeat Kokoranu, the person who tried to threaten and rape Anzu and psychologically damage Seto Kaiba in a Duel Monsters that left him in a near-death coma state. Atem, despite his brutal and twisted methods, is willing to act on these selfish deeds in order to end a sinful conflict, even willing to seek an immoral justice to allow his enemies to live or die a slow, painful death. With Yami Bakura is another story. The idea of Yami Bakura is that he is written to be Atem's foil to challenge his ideals of justice and humanity. Bakura, despite him being overlooked a lot by the majority of the Yu-Gi-Oh fans, is that Bakura shouldn't be undermined as an antagonist. Despite his nihilistic and very unforgettable nature, Bakura is willing to throw himself into the story to self-reflect and tease the character's flawed ideals. In the manga, he is willing to stall time to allow and trick Otogi during the Dungeon Dice Monsters game between Yugi and him. Despite his calm and sadistic demeanor, Bakura is willing to instilling false truth to manipulate the narrative and allow some poetic truth to be spoken. Both of these enemies have a sense of justice and ideals between their humanity and evils. The rivalry is like a small cat and mouse game where both Bakura and Atem psychologically would go to the extremes of winning a battle. Bakura in the manga is willing to tease and attack Atem's comfort zone by dragging out his dead father's corpse and attempt him to despair. Despite this morally gray moment of these two characters and demons clashing back at each other, their personal evils or darkness is revealed from one's past sins. The main philosophy of the original Duel Monster series focused on the games the characters play and how they interact with one another. The art of gambling and tactics from Season 0 can be used as a reference to explore the complexity of society and moral ties. These games and Yu-Gi-Oh can be the tabletop RPG can be considered a reflection of our own perception of reality and war. Every monster we summon and battle, we react to the set traps and create counters. The games themselves reflect that player's motives and characteristics. It came to Takahashi introducing Zord Necrophates into his story of the final arc before the final tabletop RPG of Duel Monsters. Bakura, during his talk with Yugimoto, told him that both Atem and Bakura are fated to end their personal battle. With Bakura knocking out the person who stole the Egyptian god cards, we can slowly see some of Bakura's actual humanity and self-awareness being shown, expressed about his very goal of passing on in death with the Pharaoh and trying to end this 1,000-year-old game. To fulfill his purpose of ending himself in death, this will later be reflected upon the King Bakura's perspective on humanity and the actions of the ancient Egyptian gods. Bakura finally expresses how the millennial items cause chaos and war upon Egypt and his own village. His secondary goal is to get revenge on the priests and royalty for causing the destruction of his village. Despite Atem's own father trying to keep the order of peace, he slaughtered nameless Egyptians to prevent a war and committed the act of genocide. This is where the idea of evil comes up in the manga. Despite both characters and the entire country committing these acts, inhuman acts, and determined choices, when Zork comes into the fray and story to attack the Egyptians, Atem sees the perception of the world evils right in front of him. Atem starts to feel free within Zork's despair and existence. This evil deity is the very idea of evil itself. Zork referenced how humans act on slaughter, cause more destruction and problems to themselves without even reflecting on them or even thinking. Now that I clear that up, are humans truly evil in terms of the actions they cause despite these morally gray actions? After the death of Bakura, Atem, when facing Priest Seto, tries to calm him down. After Kisara, the original blue-eyed white dragon, was killed, Seto was on the verge of despair and revenge. After the darkness within both characters are completely subsided, Atem starts to understand the notion and flow of humanity. Atem remarks on the idea of evil itself. Atem in Season 0 acted out of justice selflessness. That same Atem understands the meaning behind evil. With Bakura defeated in battle and Atem having the final duel with Yugi, Atem comes full circle, passing on to the realm of the afterlife and starts to reflect on his humanity. Even though he can never forget the actions of war-torn damage, he can finally pass on in death and accept his own heritage and existence of the nameless Pharaoh.